Jake here for American Muscle, and today I'm taking a look at the SR Performance Sport Coilover Kit fitting 2011 and newer Challengers. If you're looking for an affordable and easy way to lower the stance of your Challenger and also improve the handling, then look no further. This coilover kit from SR Performance allows you tons of adjustability with a pretty significant drop in ride height and improved handling to boot. So if you want a lot of features without spending a lot of money, this is going to be the setup for you. This coilover set packs a lot of features in for the price. Now visually, they are going to be able to lower your car up to 3 inches in the front and up to 4 inches in the rear, so it provides a pretty significant drop versus your stock setup. And these are height adjustable as well. You've got collars on the shocks, both front and rear, and you've got adjustable spring purchase too. So if you don't want to go all the way down, say if you live in an area with some bad roads, or if you like to just keep some height, you've got the option to dial these in exactly how you want. But these are not just about the looks. There's actually quite a bit going on here. So you get a set of monotube shocks for the front and rear with 36-way adjustable damping. So you can really fine-tune how these ride and handle. If you're hitting the track, going to autocross, or carving up a mountain road, simply go ahead and dial them up. Or if you're taking a longer road trip, you can dial them back for a softer ride. And that's something that you don't typically see at this price point. Now, of course, since these are coilovers, you're getting new springs as well, both front and rear. And the springs are uprated versus your stock ones as well to accommodate for the drop in height and also to help improve handling and just to work better with these adjustable shocks. Stiffer springs and shocks means less body roll and less weight transfers. So these are going to be a big improvement in corners especially. The front springs have a 672-pound spring rate, while the rears have a 784-pound rate. So combine that with the shocks and a lower ride height, and this is going to make for a much stiffer ride versus stock. But you do again get the adjustability here to soften these up a bit, so it's not going to end up being punishing. Now, something else you don't see at this price point, I've had my hand on it for a while, is the inclusion of adjustable camber plates in the front. So these are going to allow you to correct that negative camber that sometimes comes with lowering a car. Since you're changing the suspension geometry by dropping things down, these are going to help correct that. It's going to make alignments easier, and it's going to allow you the flexibility to dial in your car's handling a bit more as well. So if you want a little bit more negative camber because you're hitting the track, you've got that adjustability as well. Or if you're just driving on the street, you can correct that and have it pretty much at 0. It's a really nice feature to see included, especially at this price point. Construction here is all pretty solid as well. The springs, both front and rear, are finished in this white powder coat. So they're gonna look nice and they're gonna be durable for a while as well. Keeps the springs protected, helps prevent against cracking. The shocks feature a black powder coat too on the bodies, and it's gonna make everything look nice and stay fresh for as long as possible. Like I said, you've also got new spring purchase for the rear, which are also adjustable, and the adjuster tools for the collars and perches. Now, these may not have all of the flash of some of the more expensive coilovers, but I don't think you're going to be disappointed considering the price either. Because again, you've still got all that adjustability, both front and rear. You can just spin these collars up, lower this down as you see fit to get everything dialed in the way that you want. Plus, again, you've got those camber plates and some pretty significant upgrade as far as shocks and springs go too. Now, I know I've alluded to the price multiple times throughout this part of the video, but these are going to run you just about $900 for the full setup as you see them here. And that makes them one of the least expensive choices on the market, and absolutely the least expensive one that also includes those adjustable camber plates. While again, these may not be the flashiest, they're still going to give your car a cool stance, greatly improved handling, and some serious adjustability to boot. So if you're in the market, I think these are an excellent option, especially for something that's not going to blow out your budget. Installation is going to get a 3 out of 3 on our difficulty meter, and you can anticipate it taking you upwards of about 4 hours to do this. It might be a little bit more depending on your familiarity with your car and suspension setups. Now, while this kit doesn't require any modifications to your Challenger, this is a lot that you have to get in. And since you don't have to mess with a spring compressor though, this is a job that you can definitely accomplish at home should you have the time. And to show you exactly what's involved now, let's head on over to the install bay.
The tools you'll need for this project are an impact gun or a 1/2-inch drive ratchet, a tape measure, a pry bar, a soft trim removal tool, a hammer, a long extension, a 7/8, a 13/16, an 18, and a 10mm wrench, a 21mm, 18mm, 13mm, 10mm, 15mm, and a 16mm socket, and a 3mm Allen wrench. Hi everyone, today we're installing a coilover kit on our Challenger, so let's get started with the uninstall of the stock system first. First thing we're going to do, once you've got your vehicle properly and safely supported either on a lift such as what we've got, or using a floor jack and some jack stands, and you've got your wheel and tire removed, now we're going to go ahead and disconnect our sway bar link right here on the back of this front strut. And to do that, we're going to use a 10mm socket and a 13/16 wrench. Now, because a lot of times this stud likes to spin when you start to take off this nut here, so we're going to use our 13/16 wrench to hold the nut still, and then we're going to use our impact gun to spin the stud itself. So we're going to put this on as if we were tightening it, and it's a 10mm socket. So we'll put that on, hold the wrench, and then remove the nut and slide the sway bar link out of way. Next thing we're going to do is remove this bolt that holds the bracket for the brake line on the back of the spindle, so that when we remove the spindle from the upper control arm, it doesn't put any tension on the brake line. So we're going to use our 10mm wrench. It's a little difficult to get the camera in here to see this, but it's right behind and you'll be able to see it. And it's connected right to the brake hose. So we'll just go ahead and loosen that up and remove that bolt there. And then you see the brake line and the bracket are free. Now, next thing we'll do is go ahead and disconnect the upper control arm bolt from the ball joint and the spindle so that we can get that free. Now we're going to use our 18mm wrench and loosen up this nut on the ball joint. And we're not going to take it all the way off yet because we need to separate the spindle from the upper control arm. To use that, we're going to use our ball peen hammer, and we're just going to hit on the edge of the spindle here to break that loose. Now you see it popped off there, but it didn't actually expand and fall off because we left the nut on there. Now that we've got that loose, we can go ahead and remove the lower bolt for the strut assembly. Now that we've got our spindle separated from our upper control arm, we can go ahead and remove the lower bolt for our strut assembly using our 18mm socket. Now on our stock strut assembly, the nut for this bolt is actually welded to the strut, so we need a wrench on that side. So we'll just use our 18mm socket and remove this bolt. Now we can go ahead and finish removing the nut from our upper control arm, simply by squeezing the two together to release the tension on the nut. And we'll put the nut back on the ball joint just to keep us from losing it. Next thing we're going to do is remove the 3 nuts that hold the top of the strut to the inner fender, and then we can go ahead and pull our strut out. Now we're going to use our soft trim removal tool to pop this lid off of the top of the strut and expose the 3 nuts that we need to remove. And to remove those, we're going to use our 13mm socket. Now this third one, before you remove that, you're going to want to go ahead and put a hand and hold the bottom of the strut to keep it from actually falling out. Now with that last nut removed, we can go ahead and separate the bottom of the strut from the actual control arm and go ahead and pull this out. Now what you can do is push down on this top of the spindle here to be able to get it out of the way and slide the bottom of the strut away, and then just remove your strut. And now you can repeat that whole process for the other side. Now with our rear shock out of the way, we can go ahead and work on removing our rear spring as well. And to do that, you're going to need your floor jack or a pole jack like what we've got here on the lift to support this lower control arm so that when we take out the bolt, it doesn't just fly out and cause some damage or some injuries. So once you've got your jack in place, next thing we're going to do is remove the bolts that hold the two rear exhaust hangers on our exhaust. So that way we've got access to this bolt for the lower control arm that we can actually remove. So let's go ahead and get those exhaust hangers taken off. All right, so we've got one hanger right in front of the rear muffler, and we've got another one at the back of the rear muffler. So we're going to use our 13mm socket and an extension to go ahead and remove these bolts. And now you can just let that exhaust hang where it's at. Now we can go ahead and remove this lower control arm bolt here so that we can release the tension on our spring and get it removed. Now you want to be very careful at this point and make sure that your jack is underneath the control arm here and you've got a little bit of tension on it to release the tension on this bolt so that we can get it out. Now when you go to lower the control arm after you've got the bolt out, you want to do this very, very slowly because of all the tension that's built up in this spring. You don't want that just flying off and causing some damage or some personal injury. So we'll use our 15mm socket on the bolt here and an 18mm wrench on the nut on the other end. And let's get that out of the way. Now that we've got our bolt out, we slowly start lowering the control arm to release the tension on the spring. Now once the upper part of the spring is out of its perch, we can go ahead and lift that spring out. And then the other thing you're going to want to do is remove this upper insulator that's in here right now so that we can go ahead and insert our new spring. Now you may need to use like a flathead screwdriver to kind of wedge it up in there to free this insulator. Now because this is a height adjustable set that we're putting on our vehicle, you'll want to make some changes eventually to the ride height. Now the one thing that you will want to do first off is adjust the height of your front strut. So you can determine this is supposed to be adjustable up to 4 inches of drop. I don't recommend you go that low, but it's up to you. So to adjust the height on this, you don't want to mess with the collar up here right below the spring. The preload is already on the spring, the tension is already set for the actual stiffness of the ride, so you don't want to mess with that. What you do want to use is this lower adjusting collar on the body itself to adjust your ride height. So to do that, what you're going to do is loosen this up, and then you can spin the lower portion of your strut to the ride height that you want. Now I recommend that you go ahead, once you've got the original one out, go ahead and measure it, get a ride height off of that, and then you can adjust your new one to the ride height that you want. Now, we've set ours to where we're going to be about 2.5 inches of lowering on this new kit. Once you've got it adjusted, you go ahead and tighten up that collar, and then you can put this in. One other thing to note, when you go to install this, you'll notice that this bracket here for the sway bar link, it's got a flat side and it's got an angled side. You want to make sure that this flat side is facing towards the front of the vehicle. So when you put this on, say the driver's side, you see this is going to be towards the rear of the vehicle and the flat side is going to be towards the front. So you want to make sure that you put the new struts in that way. Now, the other thing to consider once you do this is that in order to adjust the ride height after it's installed, you will need to remove at least the lower bolt and separate it from the lower control arm in order to spin this collar to adjust the ride height. Now, for the rear, we've got our spring, we've got our height adjuster, we've got a rubber insulator, and a nylon washer. So the insulator is going to go on the top of the adjustment collar, the washer is going to go on the bottom, and then the flat side of the spring is going to go on the adjuster like this, and it's going to be installed like such. Now, to adjust the ride height for the rear, what you're going to need is a 3mm Allen wrench to be able to loosen up this ring. Once you've got that loose, you see that this will go ahead and spin. Now we're going to go ahead and tighten this up, and we're going to go with the height that is preset from the factory. The only way that you're going to know exactly what ride height you want is to go ahead and install it and see where it ends up. If you need to adjust it later, you can use your wrench, loosen up the bolt, use the wrench to make the adjustment once it's on the vehicle. So now that we've got that done, and the other thing that you want to remember is when you go to install, after you install the fronts and you go to install the rear, you're going to want to have both springs in at the same time without the shocks being installed. And then what happens is you go ahead and reinstall your tires, set the vehicle back down on the ground, give it a couple of good bounces to kind of settle everything in, and then take your measurements as to where you want the ride height to be. So you can either raise it or lower it at that point, or if you like where it's at, you can go ahead and leave it where it is. So let's go ahead and get this installed on the rear. All right, now we can go ahead and install our spring assembly into the vehicle. And one thing you want to note is you want the end of this spring here at the bottom to coordinate with the stop that's built into the insulator in the lower control arm. It's a little difficult to show you with the camera to get in there, but you'll be able to see it when you're looking at it. You'll notice that there's a stop built into the isolator, and that's where you want this end of the coil to be. All right, so now we're just going to go ahead and slide our spring into position. Like I said, making sure that it's on the stop. And kind of press this down into the isolator. Now you'll notice that there's a gap here between the spring and the perch, which is expected since this is a lowering kit. So then you can just start raising your jack underneath the control arm to get it into position. And you want to try and raise this up as level as possible. And then you just keep raising it up until you've got your holes lined up on the control arm and on the mount on the vehicle itself. You also may have to use a pry bar to push the control arm either out or in to line up the holes once you get it to the right height. So that's a situation that we're in right now. The holes are lined up vertically, but horizontally they're off a little bit. So we're going to use a pry bar to kind of help adjust our control arm so that we can install the original bolt. So like I said, it will take a little bit of playing around with it to get the adjustment just right. Now once you've got it started like so, you go ahead and use your socket to kind of screw it in. Now you don't have to worry too much about damaging the threads. You don't want it to be too tight, but it is an aluminum bushing in there. Now once you've got the bolt all the way through, you go ahead and reinstall your nut and tighten that back down. Now with our spring installed on one side, we don't want to install the shock absorber yet. We want to go ahead and repeat this process for the other side and get the other side of the spring installed. Then we'll put our tires and wheels back on, lower it down and check our ride height, adjust if necessary, and then we can put our shocks on and reconnect our exhaust hangers. Now we're ready to go ahead and install our front strut assembly. So we'll use this and we'll put this back up in place, and using the supplied nuts that come in the kit, we'll go ahead and attach them to the top to hold the strut in place. We'll line up our studs in the holes, put our nuts on top just to hold them in place. And now we can go ahead and assemble the lower half. Now we'll go ahead and reconnect our spindle to our upper control arm. Now if you remember, the nut for the lower strut mount was already welded to the strut. The new one does not have that capability, but they do provide you with a new nut. So now we'll go ahead and install our bolt and our new nut and attach our lower strut mount. Now as you can see, there's quite a bit of difference in where this thing sits in relation to our control arm. So we just need to lift up on our lower control arm and slide our bolt in. We'll go ahead and attach our nut on the other side. Now we're going to use our 7/8 wrench and our 18mm socket to tighten that lower bolt up. Now we'll go ahead and reattach our sway bar link. And just like when we took it off, we're going to use our 13/16 wrench to hold the nut and then tighten the stud. Now we can reinstall our brake line bracket using the original hardware as well. And we'll tighten that down with our 10mm wrench. And now we'll tighten down the 3 nuts at the top of our strut. And we'll tighten down our 3 top bolts using our 13mm socket. Now the kit also comes with some dampening adjusters to go in our front struts. Now there's 32 different adjustment levels for these struts. So I recommend that when you put this in, turn it all the way to the right, and that will give it the stiffest ride that you're going to have. And then you can run it back 16 clicks to put it right in the middle. Start from there, and then you can adjust your ride stiffness from that point. So to install this, all you have to do is just insert it into the top of your strut, and then you can make your adjustments from that point, simply by turning it right or left. If you turn it to the right, it's going to make it a stiffer ride. If you turn it to the left, it's going to make it a softer ride. So if you start in the middle, you've got a good place to start. Now with everything but the rear shocks installed, now is the time to go ahead and reinstall your wheels and tires, set the vehicle down on the ground, give it a couple of good bounces, make sure that the suspension is settled, check your ride height. If it's where you want it, great. Then you can put it back up in the air, install the rear shocks, and go from there. Now you will need to get this aligned at an alignment shop because of the fact that we changed so much of the suspension geometry. But at this point, we've already tested ours. We like the ride height where it's at. We're not going to bore you with that detail. So now we're just going to go ahead and raise the vehicle back up and install our rear shocks. All right, now that we've got our ride height adjusted and we're ready to install our shocks, Because the shocks are adjustable as well, we need to know what height to adjust those to. So to determine that, what we're going to do is we're going to measure from the top of the shock mounting plate here down middle of the hole of the lower shock mount. So we'll use our tape measure, slide it up inside to the top of the plate, look at the center of the mounting hole down here, and we come up with exactly 2 feet. So now we can go ahead and adjust the length of our shock to match that. Now we'll take our tape measure and measure our shock from the top of the plate here to the center of the hole, and it looks like we're about 1/2 inch short. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and loosen the adjustment collar here. Turn the bottom half of the shock body and do a remeasure. All right, now we're at exactly 2 feet from the top of the shock mount to the middle of the mounting hole at the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and leave it there, and we'll just tighten up our collar. And you can use the supplied wrench as well to go ahead and snug that down. Now you want to do that to both shocks, and then you're ready to actually install them. Now to install our shock, what we're going to have to do is compress this so that we can install the lower part of the shock into the lower control arm and still clear up to the upper plate. So we're going to go ahead and compress our shock as much as possible. Now you will also have to move pretty quickly to keep it from uncompressing so that you can get it installed. So we'll go ahead, slip that into place, and let it expand. Now we'll go ahead, install our original bolts at the top. And we can go ahead and tighten up our 2 bolts at the top using our 16mm socket. Now we can install our lower shock mount bolt. And we'll slide our original bolt back in to the bottom, attach our nut, and tighten it down using our 15mm socket and our 18mm wrench. And now you can repeat that process for the other side. Now we can go ahead and reattach our exhaust hangers. Again, reusing the original hardware. And we'll tighten them down with our 13mm socket. Now you can repeat that for the other side as well. And that wraps up our review and install of the SR Performance Sport Coilover Kit for the 2011 and newer Challenger. Thanks for watching, and remember, for all things Challenger, keep it right here at AmericanMuscle.com.